Recording live from Glory Hole Studios in Chicago and beyond. This is Cognitive Dissonance. Every episode we blast anyone who gets in our way. We bring critical thinking, skepticism, and irreverence to any topic that makes the news, makes it big, or makes us mad. It's skeptical, it's political, and there is no welcome mat. Today is Thursday, November the 14th. And Cecil.
Yeah.
There's a lot of appointing going on these days, my friend. A lot. It's an appointment heavy. I don't know. Do you listen to The Daily?
I do, yeah.
The Daily that I was listening to this morning, as they were recording The Daily, like, oh, there's another one.
Yeah.
It was really kind of funny. It was like in real time.
Yeah.
Like,
in real time. And the appointments are crazy.
The appointments are so nuts, dude.
Yeah,
They're so crazy.
We're going to get into them.
Yeah.
I want to mention before we get started, I've seen a lot of people sort of drop off from news programs lately. There's a lot of messages from people who are like, I can't do it anymore. I'm just not interested in the news anymore. It's so bleak, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we here at Cognitive Dissonance genuinely fucking agree. Over the last 4 years, when Trump was in the news, we would cover him because he was at this point someone who was either running for the presidency or he was someone who was in trouble, right? There was oftentimes we would cover his trials, things that he would, there was a whole long form article where we read his bullshit. The 2020 election was stolen from me. Here's the proof. So we've covered quite a bit of what Trump has done in the past. Before, when Trump was president, we covered a lot of what Trump was doing. Tom and I, we talked before the show and we've talked for the last couple of weeks. What we don't want to do is continue on that path to talk about every little thing that Trump says. Every little thing that Trump says, Trump often doesn't follow through, or he'll say something horrible and it doesn't really mean anything except for that he's horrible. We know he's horrible. We don't need to continue on telling people how horrible he is. If Trump is going to do something or put something in place that makes us think, hey, we should probably mention that, we almost certainly will. But we want to try to do three things. We want to roll back to more of our atheist roots, more of our skeptical roots, and more of our funny roots.
Yeah.
We want to try to kid around more and have more fun. And we also want to ask the audience, too, to send us uplifting stories, because we want to try to create a segment from now on about uplifting shit that's happening in the world. What's happening with Trump, there's so much anxiety in the world because we're not sure what's going to happen. We don't know what he's going to do. We see some of these appointments materializing, but they don't necessarily mean that something bad is going to happen. We just know something happened. Tom and I are going to continue to talk and bring you all the times when something we think in the horizon is something that we genuinely need to talk about. And we probably will talk about Trump probably every episode, but we're going to try to limit it as much as possible because we recognize there's just an overload of this information in the world.
Yeah, it's exhausting. I don't know about you, but after the election, I couldn't bring myself to listen to my usual morning news podcast. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to look at the newspaper like I normally would read. I keep saying newspaper, but like a digital newspaper. I usually read the paper or read the news every morning, couple of 2-3 sources every morning. I had a hard time with it.
Yeah.
And I recognize that like that hard time is not going away for everybody. And I get that. And to a certain degree, it's not going away for me either. I don't want to be a bleak person. Yeah. And we did have a talk about this. I feel like over the last few years, as the news has gotten more serious and more difficult, from COVID and January 6th and just, I feel like I've lost some of the joy that I used to bring to this show. And I want to bring that back. I want to find that again and enjoy the laughter again. Yeah. So Cognitive Dissonance will always be here for you. We will always talk about stuff that means stuff. We were not going to get rid of analysis.
We're not going to not talk about that stuff, but I think we're going to limit it a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. We want to be a place where people can come have a good time.
Yeah. And I really want people to have there's going to be plenty of places where you can doom scroll the news. Yeah. I don't want to be one of those places where you're doom scrolling the news. I want to be one of those places that might make you crack a smile while you're listening to the news.
Yeah.
I call upon you not as a president, but as a father.
Cut it! Would you show a little emotion? People, please. Just because it's a dramatic scene, doesn't mean you can't do a little comedy in the background. Throw a pie or two, for God's sake.
So this first story comes from The Atlantic. Trump voters got what they wanted. Trump's appeal in this election lay less in policies and more in his ability to fuel grievances and resentment, capturing a coalition that wanted his brand of populist rage. Despite debates over alternative Democratic candidates, this outcome underscores that many Americans prioritized emotional appeals over factual policy discussions, gravitating to Trump's combative rhetoric. Now tasked with governance, Trump faces a greater expectation to deliver on his promises, likely to reveal the realities and consequences of his leadership for his supporters and critics alike.
You liked this article quite a bit, you said.
I did. As I was reading it, I was texting Cecil and I was telling him, like, I think this is a really important article. I think this article hit the nail on the head a lot. And I think the key for me is recognizing that what mattered to the voters was the ability that the Trump campaign had to reach in and emotionally appeal to them.
Yeah.
To not try to persuade with facts. Like if we were persuading with facts, this would have been a done deal before 2015, right? Like Trump on the facts never would have been a candidate, not even an alternative candidate with alternative facts.
No way he could win.
Right.
No way he could win.
But I think what we need to do a better job and be a little more introspective, a little more honest about ourselves and say, hey, this is actually how people make choices. Choices are made in our hearts. Choices are made in our guts. Choices are not made in our brains. That is like we justify after the decision has been made.
Sure.
I'll tell you something I catch myself doing. And I catch myself doing it, Cecil, even though I know it's fucking stupid. And I know it and I'll laugh at myself and I'll still do it. I can tell you two funny things. I bought a car. I bought a car not that long ago. I had to replace a car. And I knew which one I wanted. I'd read a bunch of stuff. I bought the car. And for about a week after, I'll still sometimes read a review of that car. I own the car. My chance to make the decision is over. But I'm like, I'm reinforcing that choice.
I want to justify my purchase.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've done that with other expensive items. So like I splurged and got myself something the other day and I read a review of it after I pressed buy. I already knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted it.
And you already ordered it.
That's kind of something that I think is not terribly uncommon.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us feel something first and then we justify it intellectually when we get around to it later in the end, again, often. So I think this article really importantly recognized that.
I think the emotional appeal, the best part about this article, in my opinion, I don't know that I agree with it 100%, but I do think that piece is probably the most important piece I pull from it too. And I think the emotional appeal doesn't necessarily mean one thing. What's happening now is there's a million people out there all trying to tell you why Kamala lost. And they only have one answer. And they keep saying, she lost because of, let's just say, woke policies is one of the things I'm hearing. She lost because of the war in Gaza. She lost because of, she wasn't appealing to, the Latino demographic or whatever it is. There's all these people who are saying she lost because of, and then they have a reason. There are a multitude of reasons that she lost. There can be more than one reason.
Yes.
We keep on having this thing where we're lazy. We want to find the silver bullet. We want to find that one thing that is the reason why, and then we can fix it. It's not that easy.
No.
Fixing it means you're going to have to emotionally appeal to people when it comes to Gaza. You're going to have to emotionally appeal to people when it comes to these policies that, the DEI policies, et cetera, all the what we call quote unquote woke policies. You're going to have to emotionally appeal to people when it comes to that stuff. When it comes to anything that we're the economy, you're going to have to emotionally appeal to people when it comes to the economy. And I think that might be the key is make your comments quick, make them easy, don't answer questions, and emotionally appeal. And I think you could change it. You could change how things turn out. I totally agree with that. I would also add that I think asking the question, I see this all the time, and maybe it's because I read, probably like you, I read a lot more liberal news. Yeah. But the question of why Kamala lost, in my view, is exactly the wrong question. That's a bad question. That sort of assumes that it was Kamala's to lose. The real question is, why did Trump win? I think when we frame the question of why Kamala lost, we're assuming what you're describing, right?
which is that that it was hers to win, it was hers to lose. But like Trump won, it was not close.
Yeah, it wasn't close.
He fucking decimated this. He also won back in 2016. We need to look and see, why did Trump win? What is the appeal of this guy? And I think the thing is that like you have to acknowledge, and I don't know what we do with it, that like not all emotions are the same, convey the same power. Fear conveys a lot more power than most other emotions.
Fear motivates.
Right? We have a negativity bias. And that negativity bias, if I read one bad review of the show and I read 25 good reviews of the show, I read a bad review of the show today.
Sure.
The negativity bias, the fear bias, these emotions are stronger. So it's really tough to have a message of joy trying to fight a message of fear. As a human being, I'm programmed to want to avoid fear more than I am to gravitate toward joy. We have to recognize the psychology of that.
Yeah, I think so. I also think too that a lot of people, they have a hard time presuming that other people aren't as plugged in as they are. Mm-hmm. So the people who listen to this show, they are very plugged into the news. They know a lot of things that are happening in the world. They understand a lot of things that are happening in the world. I think often what we'll do, and I saw this a lot after the election, is they'll say they chose the party of misogyny and racism. When some of those people who voted for Trump may have never, ever heard or encountered any of those things that we've encountered for the last several years and that we heard Trump say and that we heard his party say, and the things that they promised to ensconce in policy and how racist and misogynist those things were. We heard them and we listened and we were like, holy shit, this is terrible. But that might not have reached everybody's ears. I want to point out something that occurred to me the other day is that in the 90s, all the way growing up, I would say probably until about 2000, on every television in America from 5 to 6:30 was the news. Every television in America had the news on. You were constantly inundated with news every single day. Then there wasn't you could get around it. Maybe you could watch The U and you could watch Simpsons while the news were on.
Right.
But for the most part, most of the channels, you didn't get a lot of channels, and those channels were almost always news at a certain time. So you had to encounter news in your day in some way. If I wanted to right now, let's say I was a New York Jets fan, and I wanted to listen to 12 New York Jets podcasts every single day, and then come home and watch New York Jets YouTube videos, and then watch the New York Jets on the weekend, and then we'll listen to all those podcasts again next week. I could never encounter a single scrap of news for the entire season that the Jets are on, and then the entire offseason, because those podcasts don't stop because the season's over. Yeah. Now, or maybe I like 2 sports. Then there's stuff to fill my day. And it doesn't have, I'm just using sports as whatever, but it can be literally anything. It could be Game of Thrones. It could be the newest drama on Netflix. It could be anything that you're into suddenly can pull your attention away from the news of the day. And we don't have a thing around us anymore that just puts that in our life. You have to seek that information out. So the people, especially those people in our audience and people who I see on my Facebook feed and people who are plugged in on Reddit, they're all saying the same thing, which is, I can't believe the other side chose Donald Trump after all the things I know about him. Right. Yeah. But it might not be what they know about him. Yeah. And I think we need to understand that we're a culture now of very low information people who don't have the news piped to them every day.
Well, and something else that occurs to me in the same vein is that, there was a world not that long ago, which you're describing, which we all shared a similar set of cultural experiences. And as a result, we had a shared reality. Our days, like if I watch the news and you watch the news and your neighbor watches the news, we're all watching the same news. Yeah. Now, no one's watching the same news. Your feed is different than my feed, which is different than your feed. Sure. My whole life is algorithmically adjusted to be personal. Sure. My choices are very bespoke, right? Yeah. Like I choose how to spend these hours of my day and I get this amount of information. It wasn't always like that. We used to have a broader shared reality. I think we also have to understand now that without that broader shared reality that comes from sharing media, right? And like, remember the radio? Sure. Everybody listened to the radio. So everybody, like all your friends were listening to the same songs. Now everybody's listening to something different because you can pick exactly what you like. The same is true of the news. It's all bespoke. It's all perfectly tailored. We're not sharing the same experience anymore. I don't know how we take that truth and move that into motivating voters and educating voters. But we have to recognize that we are not sharing the same reality anymore.
And I think one of the things that I would suggest is be a little more kind to other people if they said that they did this, and don't presume that that's how they did it or that's why they did it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that bringing my shared reality to them would be like, did you see the things he said? And if they say, well, I don't believe him or I didn't know him, be like, well, let me reiterate the things he said so that we can then evaluate them together. That might be a different way in which we can then contend with reality together in some way. We can call it up. We can watch it together.
Right.
We can now share a moment together. I think a lot of times we're so eager to wash our hands and say, fuck you, man.
Yeah.
I'm fucking mad. And don't get me wrong, I'm fucking mad, bro.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
But I think like there's got to be something there because I just don't see, and I don't feel like I live in a world where there is 74 million misogynists. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I hope so much that you're right. And I think that you're right. I think that a huge number of people are misogynists. And I
don't disagree.
Yeah.
I don't disagree.
I know.
Or internalized misogynists. They don't even know they are.
Yeah.
I don't
100%.
disagree. I don't disagree.
And I think that a huge number of people are just not following what's going on. And to your point last week, they're voting for something to be different because they feel like the system doesn't work.
Yeah.
And they just want a different thing now.
Yeah. That's what Bernie Sanders said. So here's what Bernie had to say. Bernie, this is all, sort of dovetailing off the last story. Bernie Sanders essentially came out and he said, it should come as no great surprise that the Democratic Party, which has abandoned the working class people, would find that the working class people have abandoned them. And he goes on to say, like, they've sort of lost the thread of economic equality in some ways.
Yeah. And
I don't think he's wrong. I don't think that's 100% the reason, but I don't think he's wrong in the sense that the Democratic Party didn't spend a lot of time talking about the economy, and they should have.
Yeah, that I feel like he's not wrong, but I feel like his language is too aggressive. I feel like the Democratic Party has done some real intangible things for the working class recently.
Yeah.
But it's clearly not enough.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, people are going to vote for just different. This makes something be different. This thing didn't work. Make something be different. It is bizarro world to people like you and I, just to share this, like that a couple of billionaires are people, the working class is lining up behind billionaires as if they're going to be working class heroes. And we know for certain that from a policy perspective, they will not be. We know it because they've said it, none of their plans are, and they've already been in power. So like, it's not going to happen. So, but I think with respect to people that are experiencing the horrible wage inequality that defines the American, social class and economic classes here, like, we've got to fix that shit. We got to come up with solutions and say, hey, it's us.
Yeah.
We're here.
Yeah.
We see what you're afraid of. And I think we have to do the work. I was just saying before, and I'm having a realization now, like I was saying before, like, God, it sucks because we don't share a reality. Like, my reality, Cecil, is more different day to day than yours than it was 15 years ago.
Sure.
15 years ago, we had many more, just as very close friends still, we had many more points of intersection because we all shared, like I said, we all shared that same media. We were all seeing the same TV shows, the same movies, or listening to the same radio. That stuff matters. But what I think we can do is we can try to share our reality with others. We can try to bring people in. We can try to create bigger bubbles. Widen out your circle, create a bigger bubble, share your reality, draw people in.
Yeah.
And
I'm not talking about fucking Trump supporters. Like,
no. Like the fucking MAGA nuts.
The people who are dyed in the wool, hardcore Trump supporters, I don't think I have anything in common with them, and I don't think I share a common reality with them, to be perfectly frank. So, and there are millions of those people.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. There are millions of those people. I don't think there's 74 million of those people, but I think there's a large amount of millions, dozens of millions of those people exist. And I don't have anything in common with them. And I don't, and in my life, I don't really want to interact with those people.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's anything to be gained. I don't think I'll ever convince them of my reality. So why bother? But I don't think that everybody is that person.
Yeah.
And I think we're trying to, a lot of people are trying to say everyone is that Trump supporter.
Yeah, and I don't think I agree with you. One, we know that that's not true. I mean, it just think there are the MAGA nuts. Those people, I agree, they're lost. Those are the lost.
Yeah.
But it's like everybody is not one of the lost.
Yeah.
And I think too that if we can share our reality in ways that aren't even political, we can get people to understand our viewpoint, the directionality, the lens that we use to see the world. And then if you've got a shared lens, we can then say, all right, now let's look at this other thing.
Yeah.
Because you've built trust.
Yeah. There's a way to look at the rest of the world and open it up.
Yeah.
I want to bring in one more story here. And this is the people who are trying to change their votes in red states. They looked to see if they could change their vote. They looked up online. There was Google searches for this. Now, it's hard to know, because Google doesn't release how many people search for this. You could just see that there's a spike.
A trend line.
There's a trend line in certain things like what's a tariff? How do I change my vote? Those types of things. And it appears that because of these spikes, and again, we don't know the numbers, so I can't tell you that it's a great deal of people, but we know that some people clearly regretted their vote, right? And I think this bolsters the point in some way that there's people who were low information voters. They didn't know what a tariff was. They didn't know a lot about what Trump was going to do. And then they came to the polls. And I mean, you can even see that in some of the people who voted for abortion access. And then they voted red afterwards. Those people came to the polls. They probably did not have that same narrative about how much Trump has damaged women's freedom in this country.
Yeah.
They probably didn't have, not all, and some of them, I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying there's got to be some that came there because we see that trend line that they voted for abortion access and they still voted for Josh Hawley.
Yeah. So I want to explore an idea with you. We talked a little bit pre-show, Cecil, but I wrote down the question: how do we tell people "I told you so" in a way that's constructive and doesn't lose them? Because I think there is going to be some value in pointing out, hey, we tried to talk about this. We tried, people said this thing was going to happen and now it's happening and now you're appalled by it, right? People said that this thing was going to get worse and now it's gotten worse and you're appalled by it. So there's got to be a way we've got to find a way, and I think maybe smarter people than me will figure this out, but we've got to find a way to lead people into that without losing them. Yeah. Because if you just say, I fucking told you so, look how right I was, leopard ate your face. Yeah. People are just going to be like, all right, fucking, I'm out of this, right? Or they'll double down, they'll build emotional walls.
More often what happens is the doubling down.
So we got to be able to show people, hey, this was predictable, because that's important.
I think you got to say this was predictable.
This was predictable, and it was predicted, and it happened.
Yeah.
And can we all agree that we find this appalling? Maybe, I think in the coming days, there may be things that happen where we can reach those people that were, just right of center. Yeah. That were not the far left, and say, hey, you didn't want this. Yeah. I know you. And this might have to be something that we do on a really one-to-one level.
Very, very personal level.
Yeah.
Because I think there are people who are listening right now that know that probably somebody they know voted for Trump and they probably are not MAGA. Right? Yeah. I'm sure there's somebody listening right now that is the case. I think, I know that a lot of people want to push back and say, I don't want to reach the center. I want to reach the left. I want to go and continue to reach the left. And I say, sure, go reach out to the left too. Make sure that the left is included in this conversation too. Yes. I think the Democrats got to be a bigger tent. I think they've got to be a bigger tent. But I also think that the people who are far left also have to accept that it's going to have to be a bigger tent if we're expecting to win. We can't just win with the far left. The far left is not going to win this for us. It's not going to be the only people who vote. You've got to convince the center and this other group that all of us want a progress. We all want, single payer health care. Right. We all want a better wage. We all want, to make sure that we have a social safety net that isn't just, good luck. Hopefully you have savings, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of things to do. And I also think too, a lot of people are trying to abandon these, and I called them earlier, woke policies. Some of these policies include immigration. Some of these policies include DEI. Some of these policies include abortion access for women, right? These are the things, these social issues, these social justice issues that Democrats really embraced this last time, right? We talked about asylum seekers. We talked about, women with abortion access. So often we talk about them as ethical things. These are the ethical things that we should be doing. This is an ethical problem. We look out at the world and we say, these are the ethical things that we should be doing to care for our fellow man. But I think we also are losing people sometimes. And what we need to do is instead say, these are ethical, but they're also economically beneficial.
Yeah.
Getting women and men childcare across the board. Getting young kids across the board fed. It doesn't matter who they are. They get fed when they go to school. Getting, like allowing people to come into this country and do jobs that many Americans will not fill is beneficial to our economy. They feed money into our economy. They buy things. They spend money. They create more wealth when they spend that money here. It doesn't just go up to one person. It goes to businesses and people get hired to handle those businesses. That's a beneficial thing to our economy. The more of those people that we can hire, the better off we're going to be because there's going to be more money to spend to hire more people. We need to start framing these things as economic wins too. And there's plenty of ways to do it. And there's smart people who can handle that. Frame it like an economic win. And suddenly you'll get those people who maybe don't give a fuck about ethics as much as you do, but they care about themselves and they care about the economy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if we like I was thinking of like an analogy, like the primary serves a different purpose than the general election. Maybe the general election should serve a purpose of saying, all right, we're going to, during the campaigning for the general election, we're just going to talk about solving for the economy. That's all we're going to talk about. And then once we win, then we can talk about ethics. Then we can do this other work. It's like you got to win first.
Yeah.
If you don't win, you can't do the other work. So you solve for the economy, you get elected, then you can do the ethics
and
stuff.
You fix stuff.
Then you fix
get in and you fix stuff. The problem is every single time they leave us a broken ass system that you got to fix afterwards. Yeah. So you spend 2.5 years trying to fix the shit that they broke. And then you got to try to fix it in a short amount of time during election season and it doesn't work. And then they flip the switch. My thought would be come in right away, come in hot and be like, okay, minimum wage.
Yeah.
Let's get it done.
Get a big thing done.
Let's get a big minimum wage thing done. If you change minimum wage in this country, you could change so many people's lives.
Yeah. Overnight.
And change it in a big way. I think, while I agree and I'm happy that they were targeting student loan debt, that was not for many people in this country. They didn't benefit from that.
It's not for most.
It's not for most. And so you're targeting a lot, you're creating in many ways with that. I don't say don't do it.
Right.
But I don't think you run on it.
No, you don't run on that. I agree with you. Yeah, I feel that way more and more. Let's solve for the economy, and then we'll deal with the ethics later.
Here at the Battle Creek Sanitarium, the spirits soar, the mind is educated, and the bowels are warmed again.
All right. Now we're going to get into more goofy shit, but we are going to talk about Elon Musk.
Oh my God. All right. So Elon Musk, once an atheist hero, now says he believes in the teachings of Christ. During a Pennsylvania town hall last week, he claimed that he now believes in the teachings of Christ, including the principles, love thy neighbor and turn the other cheek, which is very important for forgiveness.
It's very important.
That's a very important forgiveness one. Yeah, you got to turn that cheek. The billionaire has repeatedly made it clear that his ideology has shifted to the far right. He's also spent much of the last 2 years evangelizing the teachings of Christianity.
I think, this is a natural place for the right to go to get cred. the shorthand, we've talked about it on the show, and I think it's far more valuable on the right. The shorthand of I'm a Christian means I'm a good person on the right. I don't know that that's what it means on the left. It certainly doesn't mean that to me, but it does mean that to some people in this country. Very specifically, a large group of Christians believe that, and they are more right-leaning than other people, and you get cred.
Yeah.
You get cred. Look at fucking Russell Brand, man.
I know.
That dude who was like part of this sort of, I mean, on the left, intellectual, philosophical, maybe agnostic type person gets a show, and then now look at him. He's getting baptized. He's hanging out with Jordan Peterson, all those people. They found where where they could cash their check, and they just followed it. And I think Elon Musk recognizes I don't know that this is about money as much for him. I think it's about cred for him. He's swimming in these circles, and for him, this gives him more clout.
Yeah, well, I think if you're going to have clout on the right and credibility on the right, there is a very, very low bar purity test you have to pass. And so I think we've seen time and time again these figures that want to grift into the right or have power structures within the right. What they realize is like, okay, look, these guys need the barest excuse.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of an interesting thing about the right is you don't have to be a certain kind of this or enough of that. Like Trump's a great example. He's not any more fucking religious than you and I, man.
Yeah, when the lights come on, you only got to be a 5.
Right, yeah. He's exactly right, dude. It's because it's any excuse, right? It's like, well, all right, look, I'll take you home. Like, I'll close my eyes in the dark.
People will swipe left on him. Or is it right, or I don't know which way to. I didn't date during that era, so I don't know if it's left or right.
At 2 a.m, everybody gets a right, you know?
Everybody's right. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
It doesn't matter.
So I think guys like Elon Musk, and like Russell Brand, and Jordan Peterson's another good example.
Sure.
Like those guys, they espouse a very specific kind of like, broad brush so that everybody can kind of take it and paint what they want with it.
Oh, and Jordan Peterson is great at saying nothing.
Oh,
people love it.
He's a nothing artist.
People love it. He'll talk for so long and he'll say absolutely
fucking nothing, man.
He seriously says less than the fucking Charlie Brown adult.
Yes.
He seriously, you could get more philosophical deepity out of the Charlie Brown adult than you can out of him.
And the Charlie Brown adult won't burst into fucking self-aggrandizing tears in the middle of his own fucking hill. I've never seen a man talk himself into crying.
Especially when he's talking about his grandma's tits or whatever.
Yeah, like he had that dream. Thank you. He had that dream where like, as I saw her hairy pussy, and like, you're just like, what the shit?
Jesus Christ.
What the
How
shit,
did you
man?
last past, I saw my grandma's and then that's it? Dude, how do you last past that? Like, what the fuck?
If you had that dream, how many horses would it take to pull that out of you?
You couldn't get that out of me in Gitmo. Are you kidding me?
You'd be like, I got a pair of pliers, you got some teeth. I'd be like, you still don't have a story about my grandma.
Come on, man.
Get the fuck out of here.
Get the hell out of here with that bullshit.
Who the fuck is like, all right, I'm going to sit on my ring light. I got some. Woo, that was a doozy, everybody.
I'm going to tell you a story.
Whoa.
And it's a dream, too, so it's doubly worthless.
Fucking dumb. Oh, I'm going to tell it. So I'm going to do what I never do. I'm going to tell you a dream. I'm going to tell you a dream.
Okay.
I fucking hate when people tell me
It's not about
dreams.
your grandmother, is it?
It is not.
Okay.
It is not. But this made me laugh just because my response to it. So I had a dream that Haley and I were still dating. We were long distance. Mm-hmm. And I found out that she was in love with somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I was very sad in my dream. Sure. And I woke up and I was like, oh, good. That was just a dream. Like everything is fine. And then I remembered the guy's name. And the guy's name was Mitchell. And I left.
Mitchell!
And I laughed to myself. I was like, I don't have anything to be insecure about from a guy named Mitchell. And I turned over and went to bed. I was like, Mitchell? I'm going to be insecure about a man named Mitchell?
There's a fucking phenomenal Mystery Science Theater 3000 called Mitchell.
Is there really?
Now you have to watch it.
Now I got to watch it.
It's with Jodan Baker.
Oh, dude, I'm going to watch it tonight.
So if you know, Jodan Baker was also in another one of he did another one that they did, but he's the guy in Walking Tall originally. And they make so much fun of that guy in that movie. They make so much fun of him.
Oh, I can't wait to watch
and
this.
It's so mean. It's so genuinely mean. And it is so mean-spirited. And it's also before a time of like where people were conscious of body shaming. So there's a lot of body shaming that happens in the movie. But there's also some very funny stuff too.
Yeah.
Like it's not all just like he's fat or whatever. It's not all that, but there is a lot of very funny stuff that happens. And then the book, they mention how he wouldn't speak to them because he was so mad that they made so much fun of him. So they wrote this big long paragraph about how if he ever did try to take a swing at him, he'd fall over into the punch bowl. And they made this big long paragraph of making fun of him in their book. So it's really,
that's amazing.
Tore into Joe Don Baker, who is Mitchell. So yeah, I have a prank that's somewhat. It's not a prank. It's a disinformation campaign. I have a disinformation campaign that I want someone to undertake. That you just use this as you see fit. Get it. My suggestion would be get with a bunch of other people. So a Facebook group would be a perfect place to organize something like this. Go to Twitter and have a bunch of people buy blue check marks for their Twitter account, and then have half the group pick Trump and half the group pick Elon. And the people who pick Trump constantly take Elon's tweets and Trump's tweets and tag Elon in them and talk about how Elon is totally in the pocket of Trump and he's doing everything for Trump. And look at how Trump has made him into his servant and and go on and on and on about how Trump totally owns Elon, and Elon will do anything. Elon will eat out of his hand. Elon will follow him around and pick up crumbs that he throws on the ground and just say the meanest shit you can, the most aiming right at his narcissistic personality,
right,
and tagging him in every single one, praising Donald Trump for controlling Elon. And then the other group does the exact same opposite thing. They go to Elon's Twitter and they copy and quote tweet and reply on everything he posts about Donald Trump and tag Donald Trump in it to talk about how Elon owns Donald Trump and Donald Trump does anything he wants. And look at how weak Donald Trump is in comparison to our God, Elon, on and on and on. And just continue to do this from now until whenever. And do it like an actual genuine account would. Like, because there's plenty of these people who fillet Elon.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
Go do it. Go spread as much misinformation. And it's not misinformation because in some ways it's true. Right, one of them is controlling the other one.
Yeah, they're both bitches for each other. Yeah.
So just go and cause as much havoc as you can in their mentions and get them to hate each other. If they hate each other, the next 4 years might actually be fun.
That's a fucking riot.
I think it would be an amazing thing.
What's your over under in like? I don't know. We probably should measure this in Scaramucci's. But what's your over under on when the breakup happens?
So I'm already starting to see some comments from Trump about how Elon is, he's going to eventually tire of Elon. He said it today. He made fun of Elon in the press today in front of the House. So, and people, and I love that people are reporting it like he made fun of Elon. I love that that's how it's being reported because that's great. Make sure to again, carry that news story over to
let's break this couple up
as much as you can.
Let's break
and
this couple up.
And don't just do it there either. I mean, I feel like you need to do that with everybody who Trump nominates.
Oh, yes.
You know, anybody who he nominates, create an account that's like, oh, Matt Gaetz, you got fucking Donald Trump eating out of your hand. Oh, you're going to run the Justice Department. You know what you should do? You should prosecute Donald Trump when you get in the Justice Department. Make up, just go in and just get these people to hate each other because here's the thing. They already fucking hate each other.
Yeah, none of them have any respect for anybody.
They hate each other.
They hate everybody that's not them.
And they might never see this, maybe not. But other people will, and they may heart it. And then if they heart it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can get these people to hate each other. And then you can get other people to jump in and make it seem like they're hating each other. There's a possibility there might be a sort of wave of this sort of disgust on either side. It could happen.
Look, not only could it happen, how many fucking speakers of the House were there?
Yeah.
When the Republicans controlled the House, They couldn't find their ass with both hands because
three
nobody
total or something like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was like Kevin McCarthy and then like somebody like
then Mike Johnson came in. Yeah, right.
But it didn't take him like 14 attempts or some crazy shit.
Yeah.
It was all a fucking clown car train wreck. And for like 6 or 8 weeks, they didn't even have a speaker.
Yeah, they didn't even bother. Yeah.
These guys don't like each other. There's no honor among these
They
things.
hate each other.
So like, yeah, I think your plan could fucking work.
Get them fucking riled at each other and just let them go. And it'll only cost you enough to buy a thing for Twitter. And it's not really gonna enrich Elon that much because it's a loss leader for him.
It is.
He
doesn't care.
He's not gonna gain any money out. I mean, yeah, you got to pay Elon a couple $5 here and there, but you could think of how much damage you might be able to do if you.
Yeah, I was saying, don't worry about that. Twitter's gonna be in the red no matter what.
Yeah, no matter
no matter how many blue check marks you buy. Twitter's not making a profit.
You ain't dragging Twitter out of that.
No.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Turn the friggin' frogs gay. Serious crap. Gay. Frogs, friggin' frogs. It's not funny. I'm gonna say it real slow for you. Gay. Frogs.
All right, this story's from CNN Politics. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. repeatedly suggested that chemicals in water are impacting the sexuality of children.
Now, this is from July. I did want to say that this particular, but it's relevant now because
he's been picked to be the head of the House Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
So that's fucking nuts. Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has a history of repeatedly sharing unfounded conspiracies that man-made chemicals in the environment could be making children gay or transgender and causing the feminization of boys and the masculinization of girls.
And there's also another story about him talking about fluoride and how there's a possibility. We have no idea if he's going to do it, but they're talking about how he may remove fluoride from United States water systems. I just want to point out a couple things. One is we've had fluoride in our water system since 10 years before Robert Kennedy was alive. So, if anything was going to happen, I think clearly, if anything, Robert F. Kennedy is a reason to get rid of fluoride.
I was going to say, Cecil, I feel like the world's gotten stupider. We've had some fluoride in the water. I am converted.
That's a bad thing for our teeth, but then it's just a bad thing in general. And then the other thing that they talked about too is that if he's the head of this, he could maybe get rid of very specifically get rid of some of the vaccines, or at least limit some of the vaccines. Man, I was looking it up today. Coronavirus, there's a possibility you get 1 to 3 persons sick from having coronavirus. You can get up to 18 people sick if you have the measles.
That's that R naught number.
Yeah.
The R naught is 18.
So much more. It's
fucking
so
bonkers.
Much more. Can you imagine if he starts pulling these regulations and things out? I mean, I think you can right now, if you wanted to, and you were going to have a baby, you could just say, I don't want to get the vaccines. I think people can just do that. I'm pretty sure, at least in Illinois, you could just say, I don't want to do it. And then they say, look, you really should get it. And they probably try to tell you should probably get it. But then there's no mechanism for them not to, because we're seeing more and more people not get vaccines. We're seeing it all over. There's plenty of people who aren't getting these vaccines. The problem is that him being part of that system, he can then make it so that they can't even really ask you or something like that.
Well, so
you can put things in place that can make it so it makes it more difficult for people to get vaccines.
Yeah. So most of the vaccines, most childhood vaccines that they talk about being mandatory are mandatory with exemptions.
Yeah.
So, and then different states all have different exemptions. So some states have religious exemptions, some don't. Some states have like an ethical exemption, some states don't. All states have medical exemptions.
Sure,
There's some people that can't get the vaccines. And if the kids don't get the vaccines, so they're typically not allowed to enter school.
Yeah.
So you can't go and enroll your kid in school if they don't have the mandatory vaccines, unless they also have an exemption.
Sure.
If you get somebody who's a fucking vaccine denier, like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services, and they're just we're just going to make it illegal for states. Because remember, states are in control, not the federal government. If they're going to make it illegal for states to put a mandatory vaccination at all, a huge number of people just won't do it.
Yeah.
Right now, also, you've got a medical system which recognizes that these are mandatory. You've got a school system. You've got 2 institutions which are helping to educate and to push parents into making this choice. If it's no longer mandatory, There will be doctors that don't want to have this fight. They don't want to have this argument. They don't feel like they have a legal leg to stand on in order to demand to have this fight. Schools won't push it. They won't be like, hey, give me your paperwork. We're going to create barriers. We all know barriers are how a lot of things get done.
Yeah.
You know?
And people might just like wind up, you know, in 4 years, you might not see a ton of change. But in 10 years, with the people who were born in those 4 years, you could see massive closing of schools because there's one kid who got, measles, and then a bunch of, you could get thousands of people can get an outbreak.
Dude, we'll have polio back.
And you could have polio back. I almost feel like the worm in his brain is vulnerable to vaccines. And it's the thing that's controlled. It's like one of those cordyceps things that's like makes him climb he's going to climb like a blade of grass and get eaten by I feel like that's what's controlling him to become the head of this.
Does he have stock in iron lung machines? Like, is make polio great again?
Yeah,
is that the new slogan?
That's true, dude. It's
what
true.
the fuck?
It's crazy to me that the people who Trump is picking are the least qualified people in the world, and in fact, the exact opposite of what you would want to see in those.
Okay, but quick hot shot.
Sure.
I mean, like Robert F. Kennedy. Clearly, what do you happen to know his scientific bona fides? Can you name them?
He doesn't have any.
That's right.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
None. He's not like. He's not it makes me laugh. It's like when they put fucking Ben Carson, a fucking neurosurgeon, in charge of HUD, the Housing and Urban Development. You're like, yeah, I'm sure he bought a house, but he's a fucking neurosurgeon. He's got nothing. He doesn't know shit about housing.
They put a dude who was a Fox News host in charge of the defense.
Yes.
That's an $800 million a year budget. Maybe billion? Is it billion or million? I don't know.
It's all the monies.
It's a lot of money.
It's like
I think it's billion. It's got to be a billion.
It's got to be billion.
It's got to be a billion. It's 800 billion.
And like that is a guy he's fucking on Fox and Friends.
Yeah.
He's one of the friends. He's not a Fox. He's one of the friends.
It's one of the friends.
He's in charge of the fight. Like that. Like the last people that held that job were like they had fucking stars on their shoulders, man.
These are people who are part of, and this is a guy who's like, yeah, I did a tour in Iraq as a guardsman.
He was National Guard. He wasn't a fucking he's not a. Come the fuck on, man.
I will say
it's the least competent. It's almost like a game. Like
I know
the least competent people.
But let's talk really quickly about these appointments because a lot of people are in some ways upset. There's a lot of people I'm seeing online are upset about the Gates appointment if you don't know, I'll mention a couple of these. Matt Gaetz, he's the guy who looks like either Beavis or Butthead. I think it's Butthead. I'm not sure which one it is.
I don't know either.
It's Butthead. He looks like Butthead, and he's the guy who was basically throwing a wrench in everything that was happening in the House for the last several years. He's a congressperson from Florida. Then there's Tulsi Gabbard, who was a Democrat and then eventually left and became a Fox News correspondent. It's been suspected that she's a Russian agent because she literally, all she does is talk about Russian propaganda to Americans.
I think she's got an accent now.
And she's now in charge of national security. He made Christine Noem, the person who killed her dog because it was acting up, a puppy that was acting up. She murdered in a hole in the middle of South Carolina or whatever. She is now the Homeland Security
I didn't hear about that one. That's good.
And then there's this Fox News guy
it's so bad.
Who's in charge of the Department of Defense. So there's a bunch of these people, right? These people who are really unqualified, but they're all troll appointments.
Yeah, man.
And in many ways, what they are is just sycophantic appointments. Yeah. One of the pundits I saw talking about this today, they had this comment and they said, with the Gates appointment, what Trump is trying to do is show the Senate that he's in control and you're going to basically green stamp whoever I have. I'm going to make you jump
the dominance thing. He's humping their leg.
I don't think Trump cares that much. I think Trump basically is just looking around the room and saying, who's my guys? Who have been my guys? Who stand next to me? And he's just awarding them something. And he didn't know what he was doing before. If you remember, his appointments were crazy before.
Yeah.
They were insane before. But What he did have before was a group of people who somewhat knew what someone was capable of. So they would look around the room and there was enough advisors near him where they would say, this guy for this. And he would say, okay, fine, I'll take this guy for this. And he didn't make insane appointments of people who was just like a fucking Fox News host for Department of Defense. He didn't do that last time.
Bonkers.
He instead was like, okay, fine, I'll have a general do it. There's a general, at least somebody who I think I might be able to do. So I don't think the one saving grace, they hate each other. That's awesome. The other saving grace is they might not know. We were super worried about Project 2025 because we were afraid they were going to put insiders in charge of a lot of these positions, and they were going to dismantle these industries in these governmental institutions from the inside. We don't know that that's the case. Some of these people may not even know how the do you think Matt Gaetz really understands how the Justice Department works? Don't you think he's going to have to get up to speed in order to even be dangerous? It's going to take him a while. And then I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be really resentful that they have to answer to Matt Gaetz. And so I think there's going to be a lot of revolts in these places, and they're going to get stymied. And I think the same thing's going to happen in the Department of Defense. Do you think there's going to be a bunch of 4-star generals that's going to be looking at a Fox News host and be like, yes, sir? Are you like, I feel like these appointments actually might be beneficial because they're troll appointments, and I think a lot of people will not respect them. I know a lot of people might send us messages and be like, they're going to dismantle the department. And yeah, I can doom and gloom, but I also think a lot of times these people are just genuinely incompetent and bad. And I think that in a lot of ways, these appointments are not as bad, at least on the surface right now. I could be totally wrong, right? And I'll eat it. I'll eat it if I'm wrong. But I just don't think that they are as bad as I think a lot of people are thinking.
Yeah, like what I feel like he's very clearly doing is selecting for loyalty. Like
exactly
that, like the only thing that matters in his selection process is the loyalty process, is the loyalty question, right? Yeah. That's why he asked Comey. Is the first thing he asked Comey, like, are you loyal to me? And like Comey's like, the fuck? And he's like, okay, you're fired.
The government. And he's like, fuck you. I'm eating ice cream. Get out of here. You can't even have a hamburger.
I'm going to throw ketchup.
I won't even let you have a hamburger.
And don't drink my coffee on the way out. So like he's selecting for loyalty first, but he's not selecting for competence at all.
At all. It's not even part of the equation. So he is not solving for why.
With the Matt Gaetz, yeah, for real. Like it's like why is the question we're all answering, but he's never going to get to the answer.
Solve for that one.
Like with Matt Gaetz, think about this. Like the Attorney General of the United States is one of the chief legal advisors. So Trump is going to go to Matt Gaetz.
Oh, think
and
how
Matt
bad
Gaetz is going to be like, like, I don't tell me like I know he went to like William and Mary College. I know he fucking actually has like a legit JD from a good college, but he's still Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that guy is still just a party boy who like wants to go to like, go fuck a bunch of like underage girls. Like, because it's what he's getting investigated for,
man.
And like do a bunch of fucking drugs. He's just a shithead, lousy, awful, degenerate piece of shit.
You're not wrong.
He's going to be like, hey, we need some help over here at the Department of Justice. He's going to be like, dude, I'm busy riding a fucking cocaine bull over
sorry.
here.
I asked my secretary to put her ass on the Xerox. Like, fuck you.
It's a fret out. They're going to have, the White House is going to have a couch on the front lawn.
It's going to be a guy walking through with a general hat, kicking all the drunk people to wake them up. I really do like, look, can Matt Gaetz do damaging shit? Yes.
Yeah.
Can all these people do damaging shit?
Yes.
Absolutely. I do think they can. And I don't want to downplay that these people can't do damaging shit. But I'm going to wait. The other thing that I think people are misunderstanding is that the Senate, I saw people in the Senate. Now, it may not hold true, but as it stands today, a bunch of people in the Senate are really puzzled by this
That's
choice.
A generous term.
And they are saying, I can't wait to look into the investigation that Congress has already put forth.
Republicans.
These are Republicans.
Yeah.
And you also have to give time to the Democrats. It's not like you don't have to give time to the Democrats. The Democrats also sit on these committees and they ask these questions. Matt Gaetz is going to have his dirty laundry, that he took off of a teenager. He's going to have that wafted in front of every American person.
Yeah.
I think that this is going to be a scandal and an embarrassment. And it's going to be, I don't know. I'm not sure. They might just rubber stamp him. I have no idea. But there's going to be a week of fucking him getting grilled that they may actually rescind the thing and go for somebody else. So we don't know. And if they delay it, all the better.
Yeah. If you're in the Senate, this is dangerous.
Yeah.
Like if you rubber stamp it and it goes badly, then your feet can be held to the fire.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're in the Senate too, like you're going to be up for re-election and Trump is not going to be able to help you.
Trump is, and he's not up for re-election.
That's what I mean, yeah.
He doesn't not get, he doesn't need to worry about it anymore. I think that the people, there's going to be somebody who's also probably going to suggest that maybe they'll do recess appointments. And that's one of the things that a lot of people have been thinking that maybe they'll do. But recess appointments really are a corner case, and they have to do a lot in order to get a recess appointment done. And you can still get sued if you do a recess appointment. So when Obama did it, he got sued and he had to like not do it because he got sued. And they decided that it has to be at least a recess of 10 days. And it's hard to actually get done. And we're also presuming that the president has complete and utter control over the Senate, and he can say, do a recess appointment. When you say do a recess appointment, what you're doing is you're saying to all those senators, you don't get a say in this. These are also powerful people who just got elected too, and they control one branch of the government.
Right.
So they might be like, how about you go fuck yourself? We're going to make a decision on this. Maybe we'll rubber stamp it. Maybe we won't. But the idea that it's always going to only be recess appointments, I will be convinced when I see that happen, but I don't know that I need to worry about that right now because I think the Senate, I think these people are also powerful and want that power for themselves.
And, I also want to point out too, that this is one of those times where we need to be careful about not prognosticating with our own anxiety.
Yes.
Right? Like it could happen. That's why articles are being written about it.
Yeah.
It could happen. Until it has happened, it didn't happen yet. And for us as sort of bystanders, there's nothing we can do about it. So we need to be careful about prognosticating our own anxiety and deciding about what, could happen and following that trail of dominoes all the way through to the end of the apocalypse. Like therein lies madness, especially when we are in a position like we're in right now. It's just to the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
We're in this position where that's not healthy for people to do.
Yeah.
So what's true is that there's a clown car of incompetent dipshits. There was a clown car of incompetent dipshits round one.
Yeah.
This is not this. If this comes as a surprise to anybody, you didn't pay attention in 2016.
Trump, I don't know if you remember this, but Trump assembled business leaders in his first term. He assembled all these business leaders and they all got together and these were all like far right leaning business leaders who were going to advise him on business and how businesses needed to thrive in his economy. And he had this big slate of a ton of these people, right? They all came to the White House and they showed up and they talked for a little bit and they were going to be this council of businessmen. And then Charlottesville happened. And almost every one of them was like, fuck you. And they left and they didn't do it anymore. And I feel like there's more of that in our future.
Yeah,
where there's going to be a big thing that everybody's looking at and be like, holy shit, those guys in a room is fucked. And then there's going to be something that happens that changes how that works and how that fits together. These people are often their own worst enemy. And they do things and they say things that often come back to bite them because they're not smart.
Yeah, man.
And then they say shit like there's fine people on both sides and 40 business people are like, peace. And then they run screaming out of the White House because they don't want to be associated with them. And that's going to happen again. I want people to remember the clown car-esque shit that happened during his first term. There's going to be more of that.
Yeah, I feel like there is a cause, genuinely, there's a cause for some extremely guarded optimism that their refusal to appoint people who are even passingly familiar with competency, may actually be a huge benefit to us.
It might be a huge boon.
It could be the end of the world, but it might be a huge benefit.
Barbara, we're leaving now. I want you to come with us.
Daddy, please.
Barbara, I've made your mother cry. I'm up for re-election. We're in the middle of a scandal. I'm in the home of a gay couple who own a drag club. I realize you want to get married, but how many lives do you have to ruin to do it?
I know we spent a lot of time on Trump this particular episode, and I want to close with a story to talk about how people are treating other people that are in the MAGA world. And I know we said we weren't going to try to cover Trump a lot, et cetera, but we kind of came to that realization sort of before we recorded and after we found stories. So it's going to be our hope that we can try to do that in future stuff moving forward. So I want people to send us a message to be like, I thought we're going to talk a lot about Trump.
And we're doing it,
and a lot of it is. Yeah. I wanted to mention that before we got into this final story that is again about Trump.
Yeah. So this story is from Teen Vogue. Young people are struggling to deal with their Trump supporter parents again.
We're seeing a lot of people in this country are starting to really form some hard boundaries.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that a lot on my social media, and I'm seeing a lot of that on Reddit, and I'm seeing that in a lot of different places where there's some hard boundaries are being formed.
I think there's a lot of, I saw, and I don't know, this is anecdotal, right? So like I saw stories of people like getting divorce papers based on this stuff. I think that's legitimate. I think like there are going to be people, there are going to be, families that break down over this stuff. And I think that is fair and legitimate. If somebody shows you that they hold values that are just morally reprehensible to your own.
Sure.
Like that's somebody that it's totally fine. It's totally fine to protect your peace. It's totally fine to do what you need to do in order to stay safe and stay sane and surround yourself with people that like reflect your own moral values.
Sure.
If they're reachable, I think we should reach them.
Yeah.
And I say that, like you brought this up before, if they're reachable, we should reach them on the far left too, if they abstained.
Yeah.
If they didn't show up, they need to be reached too. We have a lot of outreach to do as people that want to win elections in order to get change done, in order to accomplish the practical machinery of politics.
To move progress forward.
Yeah. We've got work to do on both sides, but I totally understand. My former nanny, she just left us, so she's not our nanny anymore. But she's our nanny for like 4.5 years, almost 5 years.
Yeah.
So she's a big part of our family.
All your kids are older now. They're older.
We just don't. We actually haven't needed her for a while, but we just didn't have the heart to let her go because she's been such a part of our family.
Sure.
So really, for like the last 2 years, she just comes over.
Yeah, it just hangs out. Yeah.
But she's great. She's 20 something. I don't know. And like her parents are MAGA folks, like hard MAGA folks.
Yeah.
And she's leaving. She's moving to California. She's just like, I just can't can't spend time with these folks anymore. She can't do it. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal for her, but she's like, I gotta go.
Yeah. I think, a lot of people are going to have interesting decisions to make about their neighbors. I have a neighbor across the street I probably won't speak to.
Yeah.
He went out of his way to, there was a sign fight we had.
Yeah. The great sign wars of 2024.
I had a Kamala Harris sign that I put in my yard and it was stolen. And the guy across the street from me had already had like 4 or 5 signs out for the local people in the Republican Party. And he had a small Trump sign out there. And I went to my thought was, well, if you're going to steal one of my signs, and I'm not saying he stole it, it was stolen from my yard. Yeah. And I said, you know what, if you're going to steal one of my signs, I'm not going to go fuck yourself. I'm going to go to the Democratic Party. And I was like, hey, give me every sign. I was like, give me every single sign you have. And so I took every sign they had and I put them in my yard. And then the guy across the street, I think he took it as a glove slap. And so he went out and he got the biggest Trump sign I've ever seen. And he put it in his yard. And he also got another sign that says, socialism, but free market's not socialism. And he pointed it directly at my house. And I told Sarah, I said, I want to get a sign that says the guy across the street doesn't know what socialism is.
That would have been so good.
My wife's like, you can't do that. And I said, okay, how about this? If Kamala wins, can I just get a big sign that says womp womp? And Sarah's like, no, we got to live across the street from this person. But in any case, that's a guy, right, who went out of his way to be like, fuck you, I'm going to get a big Trump sign. And he took it as me, antagonizing him when really it was really just because my sign got stolen. I was mad about my sign. He was upset about that. And I also have another final. I do want to do a follow up. I didn't mention this on the show, but I had a second sign stolen.
Yeah.
There was a couple kids came to my area on Halloween, they drove up. So they were kids who could drive, essentially adult children, get out of their car and start going to all the houses near us. And they walked up to my house, and I have a Ring camera, right? I have one of those Ring cameras. It's a Nest or something. And they came up and they rang it, but it didn't answer my phone. So I let them go. I didn't notice them. And then I run outside, actually. I tried to catch them while they were walking across the street. I was like, hey, kids, want some candy? And they didn't turn around. So I went back inside. Well, next morning, my sign was gone. Well, I watched the footage, and you can see them clearly walk up and grab the sign and throw it as they were leaving. And they went across the street, and then they came over and grabbed the sign and they left. And I was like, you little fuckers. I was like, they came to my door, rang on the door, and I didn't answer. And so they just stole, and they only stole the Kamala Harris sign. So I called the sheriff, because I'm in an unincorporated area. And the sheriff said, send me the footage. Well, I sent the footage, and then nothing happened, right? Because I got a great picture of their face, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, right. They're not putting it through the fucking database or whatever.
Whatever. So my wife just on a whim just reaches out to the neighbor across the street and says, hey, you have a kid about this age. Do you know these kids? And a couple of days later, she comes over to the house. She's like, let me look at the footage. She's like, yep, I know them. And then she had already preemptively called their parents and said they stole a sign. And I got a text from their parents that was like, I'm really sorry. My kids, they shouldn't have done this. They want to come over and apologize. And I text them back and I said, look, I was like, I don't think an apology is going to help anything. I said, why don't you have them do a couple hours of charity work? I said, go have them go, if they want to work at a soup kitchen, they want to work at a food depository, they want to work at the homeless or an abuse shelter, have them do a couple of hours of that, take a picture of them doing it and send it to me, and I'll just call the sheriff and we'll call the whole thing off. And they said, no problem, we'll have it done. I said,
that's great.
And then I responded with, I'm sure you'll have plenty of opportunities to do that around the holidays. So,
good for you.
So to sort of give them a time limit on when they should do it. And I'm going to reach out to them in the middle of December if I haven't heard anything back and be like, you got anything? If they say no, I'll be like, great, well, you can deal with the judge, because the judge will, that's a fucking Class A misdemeanor, stealing my sign. Yeah, and I literally don't care about you at this point. Right. I'm like, you know what? You had an opportunity for your kid to just go out and do like a couple hours of church work, and they didn't want to do it. Well, they can do 60 hours with a fucking judge when the judge tells them to do it.
Good for you.
Yeah. So I
hope they follow through on it. I will let everybody know if they do. But I thought, I could just turn him in. But what does that do? You know what I mean? It's a Class A misdemeanor. He's a kid. Also, it might not even do anything, because when you're a kid, there's a totally different justice system for children. Yeah. And I don't think they were 18 yet. So it's like a whole thing, right? So it's like, it might not even happen. But if I can at least convince him that, maybe this was a wrong thing to do. Scare him a little bit.
Scare him a little. Like give him a little. It's not scared straight. I'm not sending him to prison or anything like that. But, if they do a little, maybe it might change their mind too. Doing a little bit of work like that sometimes open people's eyes. So maybe that'll help.
Well, I'll tell you what, like stealing the sign and then nothing bad happens to you.
Yeah. Then you just do it again.
Learn anything
then you just do it again.
Yeah, right.
And
you learned you had a fun night.
I told people last week that I met a lady that lives down the street.
Yeah.
And I went over to her house just to hang out. It's the first time I got a chance to meet her this last week. And then Sarah and I went over to her house and hung out. She told me that during the season, she not only got her sign stolen and had to put a new one out there, but people, they carved pumpkins that said Trump 2024 and FKH and put it on her lawn with a candle in it.
What?
They did like crafting vandalism. Like they had to fist a pumpkin and pull all that shit out of there and then carve it and then put a candle in it and then put it on her property.
Okay, look, legit, I hate the message, but I admire this somehow.
I mean, there's a hustle to that.
Yeah, there's a dedication to that.
There's a hustle to that.
I'm just like, all right,
I couldn't believe it when she told me.
Clearly you just wanted it more.
They fucking seriously carved a pumpkin and to vandalize someone else's property.
When I was like a youngin' and I did like vandalizing, like I didn't do like all this prep work.
It seems like a lot.
It's a lot of prep work. I never needed a fucking prep chef for it,
They're doing a lot of work. They're cutting it out. They're baking seeds in an oven.
Yeah, right. What the fuck?
They're gonna make a pie with it later when they go pick it up.
Don't throw that away.
Whatever you do, don't smash that pumpkin. I'm gonna use
those pie pumpkins. Those are a little sweet. Those are good.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for this week. We're going to have a funny show for you on Thursday, but we're going to leave you like we always do with the Skeptic's Creed.
Credulity is not a virtue. It's fortune cookie cutter, mommy issue, hypno-Babylon bullshit. Couched in scientician, double bubble, toil and trouble, pseudo quasi-alternative, acupunctuating, pressurized, stereogram, pyramidal, free energy healing, watered downward spiral, brain deadpan sales pitch, late night info docutainment. Leo, Pisces, cancer cures, detox, reflex, foot massage, death and towers, tarot cards, psychic healing, crystal balls, Bigfoot, Yeti, aliens, churches, mosques and synagogues, temples, dragons, giant worms, Atlantis, dolphins, truthers, birthers, witches, wizards.
Well, if I know anything about this country, America will go
Nuts.
for basketball.
Shaman healers, evangelists, conspiracy, doublespeak, stigmata, nonsense. Expose your sides. Thrust your hands, bloody, evidential, conclusive. Doubt even this.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/dissonancepod. Help us spread the word by sharing our content. Find us on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and Threads, all under the handle @dissonancepod. This show is CAN credentialed, which means you can report instances of harassment, abuse, or other harm on their hotline at 617-249-4255 or on their website at creatoraccountabilitynetwork.org.